Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes. I'm a designer on Dune-themed games and expansions, and I'm going to do a video about a power alliance in Dune that I call the Hayt Alliance, and this is one that exists between House Atreides and the Tleilaxu. And it's called the Hayt Alliance because of a reference to Dune Messiah, so check that out if you don't understand what that means and why the weird spelling. So let's take a look at what these two factions can do for each other in order to win a game and why they can be a pretty formidable alliance. In a nutshell, we're talking about information and we're talking about your resources getting back onto the table, as it were, in terms of forces and leaders. So with the Atreides, of course, they're a pretty strong faction because they have the card knowledge that they get in the bidding phase by knowing what cards are up for auction as they come up. And of course, their prescience in battles by being able to see one portion of the opposing player's battle plan. And that is something that they're going to be able to give to their allies. So if the Tleilaxu are in a battle, they too will have the benefit of prescience to better figure out what to play in their battle plan or what they need to do in order to win those battles. Now, the Tleilaxu, at a certain point of the game, certainly not in the first game turn, and it usually takes a couple, their leaders are not super impressive, although they do have Zol, who is an X, and Zol will be the same leader strength as the opposing leader. So Zol versus Stilgar, Zol is a 7th strength leader, against Jamis, only a 2-strength leader. But that is not the only leader strength ability that the Tleilaxu have. In advanced, they have their Gola ability. And this means that they can revive other factions' leaders as their own, provided they don't already have 5 leaders. So the Tleilaxu typically are trying to get some of their low-strength leaders killed, put Blinn and Wick into the tank so that they can revive better leaders, and they revive at half price anyway, so they can get Count Fenring for 3 spice, or Fade Rautha for 3 spice. So that is something that the Tleilaxu should be trying to do on their own anyway, and then they become a little bit more formidable in battle. They're an economic faction, which is a good partner for Atreides because they don't have a spice income on their own. Of course, Tleilaxu do take a few rounds to get up, but then they can typically have a fairly reliable income, usually pretty modest. But if there are other economic factions in the game, those factions are usually more willing to spend spice to get additional forces out or to revive dead leaders, especially if the Tleilaxu are going to increase the price of those leaders. So that is that's what the Tleilaxu typically have going for them. And of course, they have the face dancers. So the Tleilaxu are going to have 3 trader cards at the beginning of the game that they can use in order to not really win a battle, but to replace the surviving factions if a face dancer leader wins the battle. Now, it often takes the Tleilaxu a couple of turns to get a good trio of trader cards. A lot of factions will usually take a powerful leader as their own trader. And so you're talking about lower level leaders, and you're talking about usually a lot of Tleilaxu leaders that are left in the trader deck. But you can't put all of them in there. So if they can cycle through and get to some good leaders, then they're better positioned for that to be an effect that can happen in the game. But it's certainly not something that either of these factions should be relying on. It's usually more of a safety net or a last-ditch Hail Mary effort in order to win. So what they're going to need to do is they're going to need to try to fill up their hand. So if this alliance happens around the mid-game point or later, then the Atreides can help the Tleilaxu to get a really good hand of cards. And hopefully by then, they've gotten a few good leaders as well. So with Zol and maybe a couple of higher strength leaders, that's going to help them to win battles as well. They can typically dial very high because they can usually ship in a lot of forces and then afford to dial higher because they have some spice. It's not an endless amount. So out of the economic factions, the Tleilaxu are usually on the lower end of that. It just depends on how things are going and what other factors are in there helping people to contribute to their coffers. So what the Atreides need to understand is that their revival is going to be better. They'll be able to get leaders back for free. So they should feel like being more aggressive when they're in this alliance. They'll be able to unlock the Kwisatz Haderach. If they haven't already, they should immediately try to do that because they'll still have their 2 free revival, but then they can get 3 more forces out with the Tleilaxu, and it would only cost them 3 spice. So that is a much better rate for revival. So it gets them back into the fight a little bit better. And once they've got the Kwisatz Haderach, then they get that +2, plus nobody can call traitor on that leader as well. So it makes them even tougher in battle. So that's the key here is it's not a fast alliance. It's not an early game alliance, but in the mid or later game, this becomes a much more powerful alliance because they have a much better capacity to get forces back out. They've got the card knowledge and some spice to be able to give some decent treachery cards into their hands. And then that's what they're going to need to do. They're going to have to work for it. They're going to have to get those 4 strongholds by fighting for them. But that prescience in battle is really helpful. And if they can manage to get either the option of 2 different types of weapons or 2 different types of defenses, that is usually all they need to do to ensure they can win some of those battles. Dialing high if they need to, but that's the other thing is once you have certain card knowledge, if Atreides knows what defenses or weapons a faction has, and again, by mid-game, they often have a pretty good picture. A lot of the pocket cards, the ones that you're dealt at the beginning of the game, have been revealed by the mid-game. You might have some factions that do some sneaky stuff like the Harkonnen. When they buy a card, they get another one for free, and so that's card knowledge that is mysterious to Atreides. And then if you've got someone like Chom who's able to switch cards with their ally, that can sometimes lead to some question marks. But again, your ability to use the prescience to find out, well, what is it it's going to be in your battle plan, that is usually enough for them to make some intelligent decisions about what they need to do to battle. So an Atreides faction with strong leaders that they know that they can trust, that Kwisatz Haderach and a good hand of cards, they are very powerful in any situation. And so having an economic ally is very formidable for them. And then the Tleilaxu will benefit from a lot of the same things. They won't have the Kwisatz Haderach, but they'll have probably some pretty good leaders. They'll have Zol, and they'll have a good hand of cards or better, and the ability to, again, put a lot of forces into a battle, dial pretty high, and even they might surprise somebody with a face dancer that pops up in a different battle that maybe doesn't necessarily even involve their faction. So I've seen that happen, and it doesn't happen very often, but it's extra fun when it does. So that's the Hayt Alliance. Let me know if you have any questions about this alliance, and let me know any interesting anecdotes you can share about seeing this alliance in action, whether it was you as a part of it or having to work against it. That's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.